Hi, everyone. Today I wanted to talk about 10 great Shakespeare plays that I think everyone should read. Uh, Actually, 11. I have a tie at 10. But 10 great plays that I think give the reader uh, an understanding of his best writings. It also introduces you to Shakespeare's greatest characters. So uh, that's why I have chosen these 10 or 11 plays. Some great ones that I also recommend, but that have not made this particular list, are The Merchant of Venice, A Midsummer Night's Dream, uh, and Cymbeline. I think those are great plays that should also be read. But I've chosen these 10, I guess, as more representative of perhaps a little better writing uh, and an introduction definitely to his great characters. Okay, so at number 10, I have again a tie, and it's Measure for Measure and Troilus and Cressida. So Troilus and Cressida is about it's Shakespeare's version of the Trojan War of Homer's Iliad. Um, and the reason it's titled Troilus and Cressida, it's because those are two lovers that hold a significant action of the play, and there's something that happens between them. But the great characters of the Trojan War are in there. It is Hector and Achilles, Helen of Troy, Priam, uh, many others, Ajax, Ulysses. So Ulysses has a wonderful, I don't know if it's a monologue, a duologue, dialogue about why the Greeks have not uh, beaten the Trojans earlier, why it's taken so long for the Greeks to win the Trojan War. Okay, so that's Troilus and Cressida. Measure for Measure, the one that I had tied with Troilus and Cressida. So Measure for Measure is about a duke who gives his power to enforce law to someone in his court, a character named Angelo. And it's about Angelo enforcing a particular law on a character, Claudio. And Claudio has a sister named Isabella, and she is a nun. She tries to convince Angelo. So Angelo condemns Claudio to death based upon breaking a particular law. You'll have to read the play to find that out. And essentially, Isabella is trying to convince Angelo not to put him to death. So it's about their interactions, and the Duke is working behind the scenes to ensure that all things go well. So, who or what the Duke is, I think that's up to interpretation, obviously, and who and what you think the Duke is. Uh, but a great play, I think. It's also about essentially, the roles we play, our personas. They may not what we present to the outside world may not match what's going on inside. Okay? And again, it's also about the treatment of others and what comes back to you based upon your treatment of others. Okay, so that's 10. Measure for Measure and Troilus and Cressida. Number 9, Romeo and Juliet. So most people know the title of the play. I don't know if as many have read the play, but Romeo and Juliet is about Romeo and Juliet and their love. Romeo and Juliet are each from a family member of families that are at war with one another, the Capulets and the Montagues. Of course, they're some of the most well-known soliloquies come from Romeo and Juliet, but you have great characters like the friar, Mercutio, and the nurse in it as well. So wonderful monologues, wonderful characters, and of course, just language that is well known. Here in America, many high school students start with Romeo and Juliet and another play I'll mention coming up here. But definitely recommend Romeo and Juliet. Okay, at number 8, I have Henry IV, Part 2. Now, Henry IV is in 2 parts, obviously, so there's a Part 1 and a Part 2. I've chosen Part 2 because of the prominence of Falstaff. Falstaff is the great comedic character of Shakespeare. He has some villainy mixed up with his comedic qualities, but a wonderful wit, and also a great comedic scene with a justice. Perhaps the greatest comedic scene in Shakespeare, but a wonderful scene. So I primarily recommend Henry IV Part 2 because of Falstaff, but it is also about Prince Hal becoming Henry V towards the end of the play, and there's something that happens to Falstaff at the end of the play that you'll have to find out that you'll have to read to find out. Okay, so at number 7, I have Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar is obviously about the assassination of Julius Caesar, but it's more about Brutus. I think it could also have been named The Tragedy of Brutus. It is about Brutus eventually coming into league with the conspirators to kill Julius Caesar, and Cassius being the primary wooer of him into the Confederates to kill Julius Caesar. And it's about kind of Brutus's arc. It's also about Mark Antony and Octavius Caesar. They go to war with Cassius and Brutus. I think a theme of the play is projection. Brutus projecting perhaps his own power or need for power, and how he uses power onto Julius Caesar and what he does based upon that projection. So, and of course, well, not of course, but Brutus meets the spirit of Caesar towards the end of the play. And what does that spirit represent? I'll leave that up to you. So again, a great play, some great characters, some great, just some great language, and of course you have the great orations of Antony in this play. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so let's see. So at number 6, I have The Tempest. So The Tempest is about Prospero and his daughter Miranda and other characters, Ferdinand and other characters. It takes place on an island, Caliban, another one. But it takes place on an island, and certain characters that have betrayed Prospero are brought to the island because of a storm, because of a tempest. So it's about essentially, it's about not Prospero, not getting revenge, but somehow making things right. So it could be termed a comedy in the fact that everything works out at the end. But again, you have obviously some wonderful language, wonderful characters. Prospero fits into the archetype of the wise man or the magician, Merlin. But again, some great language, just some great character interactions, great symbolism. So The Tempest. Okay, at number 5, I have Antony and Cleopatra. Antony and Cleopatra are about Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, and Mark Antony, one of the Roman triumvirate or triumvir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it's about their relationship, and I think how their relationship affects one another, and how their relationship affects the greater good. So it is an exploration, I think, of selfishness and selflessness, of what exactly is love, what is mortal love, what is divine love. So a great play, and it does introduce you to Cleopatra. Many Shakespearean critics, and I'll agree, is that Cleopatra is one of the great, if not the great, female character that Shakespeare or the Shakespeare writers created. course, you have Desdemona, Cordelia, Rosalind, many others who could vie for that title. But Cleopatra is a great character. So Antony and Cleopatra. And most of it is set in Egypt, and it is about essentially the war that Octavius Caesar and Mark Antony go through for power of Rome and Egypt. That is the backdrop. Okay, at number 4, I have Macbeth. Macbeth is obviously about Macbeth. His character arc is he essentially starts out as a good guy, defending King Duncan in a war, and essentially it's about his descent or his arc into villainy, becoming a villain. And I guess, one of the great villains of all of Shakespeare. So, of course, you have Lady Macbeth, you have Banquo, King Duncan, Malcolm, and essentially it is about Macbeth's descent into evil and into madness, and Malcolm and Macduff challenging him and challenging him for the Scottish throne. So it is about power. It's about fate versus free will. So again, some of the language, particularly in the beginning, is wonderful. The language of the captain describing what Macbeth does in the wars to defend Duncan. Some of the great language in all of Shakespeare. So, of course, one of his greatest plays, Macbeth. At number 3, I have Othello. So Othello is about Othello and his, his inability to overcome jealousy based upon the manipulations of Iago, the villain. And many people have described Iago as the greatest villain, not only of Shakespeare, but perhaps the greatest villain in all of literature, because of his manipulations, what he's willing to do. So, of course, it's about Iago's quote-unquote revenge on Othello for not selecting him as a lieutenant in his army and giving him a lesser position. Iago feels he deserves the lieutenancy. It's given to Cassio. So it's essentially he wants to destroy Othello and Cassio, but Desdemona becomes a victim because of Othello's jealousy, which is created by Iago's manipulations. So Othello, a great play, great language. It's probably becoming, sometimes it's always, people ask me what is my favorite play, and I will say it's the one I'm reading. But Othello might be my favorite play. Hamlet, number 2. Number 2, I have Hamlet. Hamlet, of course, introduces you to Hamlet. Many people think he is the greatest character ever written by Shakespeare. And they might be right. Yeah, Hamlet expresses a lot of qualities, but it is a tragedy. Essentially, it's about Hamlet's revenge on Claudius, his uncle, who becomes king of Denmark. The ghost of King Hamlet, the father of Hamlet, Prince Hamlet, comes to him as a ghost and tells him that Claudius murdered him. And the remainder of the play is about, it's about many things, but the essential action of the play is about Hamlet willingly or unwillingly, or maybe better defined as ability or inability to commit revenge on Claudius. So for those who have not read the play, you'll have to read the play to see if his revenge occurs. But a question of the play is, should he even try to exact revenge? Are there other means by which Hamlet could have exposed Claudius, but still not have ended in tragedy? Okay, number 1. Number 1, I have King Lear. So King Lear, and I think a lot of people put it at number 1, and the reason I put it at number 1 is thematically It's probably the play that has the greatest depth. Um, it explores suffering. I think it explores suffering more than any other play. Human suffering. Uh, why do we all suffer? The action of the play is about King Lear being a king, having all power, and essentially him losing his power, losing his identity, and becoming a more spiritual, loving being at the end of the play, a more beautiful man at the end of the play. Of course, you have Cordelia, his daughter, who he banishes at the beginning of the play, but who really is not to be punished, but is the heart of the play. And you have the greatest fool, perhaps in all of Shakespeare, in King Lear, just simply titled The Fool. The villain is Edmund. You have some other villains. Goneril and Regan are his evil daughters. They are definitely villains of the play, but perhaps the central villain is Edmund. Cornwall is another villain. He is the husband of Regan. Albany is a good character, and Gloucester is also a man who suffers. So I think this is Shakespeare's exploration of suffering, of human suffering, and I guess, how do we handle suffering? Do we succumb to it, or do we learn from it? I think that's the gist of what Shakespeare's saying in King Lear. And by learning from suffering, what do we become? Do we become a better being? Do we become a better being? And there's a wonderful description of Cordelia's suffering, or sadness, or sorrow in King Lear. So King Lear, probably Shakespeare's greatest play. I guess essentially, yeah, because it explores evil, as many of his other plays, but there just seems to be a greater sense of evil, and I think it's because it creates a greater sense of suffering in King Lear, more than perhaps Macbeth or other of his plays. So King Lear, number one. So those are 10, 11 plays that I recommend everybody read to gain the best understanding of Shakespeare. Again, it also introduces his greatest characters, in my opinion. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. What are some plays that you would recommend people read? And again, please like and subscribe if you like the content. Thank you so much.